Brethren, without further ado, it's a man who needs no introduction, Martin. You were on a few weeks back with a wonderful talk for us. I know many people have caught up with it on YouTube, and we're delighted to have you back. The floor is yours.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here and a great pleasure to be talking about the Hermetic Art of Memory. Now, this is something I do need to make clear from the beginning. This talk is not on Freemasonry. I'm talking today about a very specific practice and philosophy which was very influential during the time when we start to see Freemasonry develop into its current form. This ambitious, meditative, mystical art has great and interesting aspects that we can reflect on. And many people believe that the Hermetic Art of Memory has had an influence upon Masonic Ritual. But I need to make clear that that doesn't mean that the ideas and thoughts of its practitioners are part of Freemasonry now or have ever all been so. I'm going to start off with a little bit of a recap so that those who were here before are reminded, and those who didn't see the previous talk know the context of what we're discussing. What we remember changes us. Everybody knows this. We know that if we have a big experience, whether it's a very good one or a very hard one, this can cause a dramatic change in our personality. We also know what we learn can change us. If we study mathematics and logic, we start to think more like that. If we spend time learning to be creative and poetic, that makes us more so. In Freemasonry, there is most certainly a belief that by experiencing wonderfully inspiring moments in our rituals, we can bring around a change. It's something that we will remember later on when we encounter a circumstance in life that lesson relates to. We also believe that by memorizing this ritual, it becomes part of us. So we all know that memory changes who we are. In this talk, we are going to explore what those limits could be. There are some who believed that the right form of memory applied with special technique could lead to a transformation in human consciousness, a kind of upgrade to the working system of the mind, an enlightenment or a raising of consciousness. This illumination would lead to almost superhuman abilities on many levels. This Hermetic Art of Memory may have had a strong influence on Freemasonry. Let's remind us why. William Shaw, who was the Master of Works in Scotland, he referred to the art of memory in a context that really makes it look like that's what they called Masonic Ritual in the day. In the piece of his Book of Constitutions, the Shaw Statutes, we see that members of the lodge, and this is the section of the statutes which is about membership, were most certainly having to memorize some form of questions and answers or ritual, which led to different grades. We can definitely see there's an apprentice and a fellow craft. So it seems likely that this art of memory was an early form of the practices we have today. Now, that term art of memory doesn't just mean remembering something. No, we can see all the publications of the day. If we look in the 1600s and the 1700s, we can see that specific phrase, art of memory, was a term for a special practice when you used an imaginary building or memory palace as a filing system. You'd walk round this memory palace again and again, always stopping at the same places. You would put symbolic objects in those places whenever you wanted to remember something. It was like your filing system. If we look at Masonic Ritual, this takes place in an imaginary building in King Solomon's temple. The early Masons didn't have beautiful temples like we have now. They had to imagine them. We know that memory practitioners who were practicing the Christian art of memory, they used to draw in chalk on the floor the memory palaces they were trying to visualize or paint with the mind, just like early Freemasons did. We know that at the time of William Shaw, two practitioners of the Hermetic Art of Memory were in the royal court of King James the First, King James the Sixth, to be King James the First. This has led many to consider how this mystical, magical art of memory may have influenced Freemasonry. But to understand the Hermetic art of memory, we have to be aware that it's a culmination of a long-lasting tradition. In our previous talk, we learnt how the classical art of memory was originally designed as a means of speech making. Each one of these different points in the building was a topic. The Greek word topic means location. Now in English it means what you talk about because of this practice. We learned that the written records of this beautiful art originally appear, or the earliest ones we've got, are from about 550 years BC. But even during the classical times of the Hermetic, of the art of memory, we do see hints at a more specialist and mystical side. There's a court case, a peculiar court case, where someone is accused of practicing the Chaldean art of memory. And this, for those who are not aware about the Chaldean oracles and this work, Chaldean is the word for the Hermetian tradition, for the Hermetic tradition, which is in the Arabic world. So, and this trial is quite interesting. It has the feel of someone being accused of witchcraft or sorcery. They're teaching some memory method which is forbidden. And that's the first hint we get that there could be some special sort of supernatural effect from memory. When Rome had fallen, a lot of the memory practitioners moved to the Christian art of memory. This art was there for learning, but more based on reformation of the person. It was strongly believed that through the correct memory practice, you could change who you are. If you were to memorize particular images in your mind and make them really strong, it would change the way you think. This was a part of European culture, from the most educated to the most basically educated person. There was a belief that whatever you put into your mind would become your mind. The most popular practices would involve the use of buildings from the Bible. Imagine yourself in King Solomon's temple. That would be a good memory palace. The tabernacle inside a Noah's Ark. But they also really loved going through the levels of hell, purgatory, and heaven, and working through those, remembering all the things you shouldn't do and the punishments for them, remembering all the things you need to do to make up for what you've done wrong, and remembering all the good things you should do and what rewards they bring. This Christian art of memory was well perfected for everyone, for the illiterate that needed to learn Bible stories from stained glass windows and paintings, to the thoughtful, educated monk, nun, or gentle person who would be reading and who would be meditating, practicing their meditatio, their contemplation on emblem books or on beautiful paintings, or even using the churches as memory palaces. Statues were favoured, symbols were favoured. Many of the symbols which have become part of Freemasonry now. Things like the all-seeing eye, which was inspired by a particular section in the Bible that talks about being of single eye, of single focus, that kind of thing. The compasses, which were inspired by the Genesis when God opens his compasses on the earth. These symbols were very much put into a building analogy. You read the memory works of Christianity and they see you as being the master builder. Inspired by a particular quote in Corinthians, you are going to build your inner self to be fit for the Holy Spirit. But memory was to take a whole new angle. It was going to become something else, born from the Christian art. When Marsilio Ficino translated the Corpus Hermeticum in 1473. He'd been hired by one of the Medici family to translate the works of Plato. And as he was going through the documents, he found something very special. A work which was by a figure called Hermes Trismegistus, Hermes the thrice great. This work claims to have the original secrets of ancient Egypt. It taught a philosophy which said that all things were of one thing. They were pure consciousness. So the things you form in your mind, the stuff you shape in your mind into visualizations, imagining into words, this was the same as the physical objects around you. Is this a matter of density? Divinity had imagined or dreamt everything into existence. In this text, Hermes Trismegistus, who is a combination of the Egyptian god of magic cloth and the Greek god Hermes, he has a spiritual experience. Once, when thinking about the things that are, a sleep came across me. Not the kind of sleep you get when you've eaten too much or worked too hard. No, an all different type of sleep. He's going into meditation. He's going into a trance. Then, upon my body became greatly heavy, and my consciousness raised to a high degree. In this state, Hermes sees the mind of all. So this text, this sacred text, taught methods of making statues and bringing higher forces into them, how you could do this. It taught about how from memory and from meditation, you could achieve insight. It was a very long work and very comprehensive. When this text was translated and published, it became the work that no one was reading, but was being published everywhere. The secret, almost forbidden nature to it made it extremely exciting and really kicked off the Renaissance. Now, we need to be clear that most people interpreted this book in a Christian sense. Hermes, thrice great. The Trinity, messenger of the Trinity. Jesus had said that there were inner teachings, that he'd given parable to others, but the disciples had had a direct teaching. This book must contain this. And it must be about the art of memory, because Hermes is a messenger, and messengers use memory. In the text, the Hermetic practitioner, he would ascend as he became increasingly pure, moral, and virtuous. He would ascend up through the levels of the planets. All this became connected to the Christian art of memory. The practice of going through the levels of heaven and this raising through the planets seemed the same. They've read in the Bible that there are many figures that could ascend to higher levels. So this certainly happens. So like Enoch, you could walk. And in fact, Hermes became seen as a figure like Enoch. Now we find some mysterious connections between this and Freemasonry start to appear. This Hermetic art of memory was, as I mentioned before, being studied. And Giordano Bruno, who was one of the most famous practitioners who'd come over from Italy and was teaching this art in London, he had taken a student, a Scottish student, called Alexander Dixon. Now, he must have meant a lot to both of them because they dedicated their works to each other. They definitely saw each other. And Bruno didn't teach inner teachings to anyone. I think he found something in Scotland, some genuine nature that he couldn't find in London because all his students seemed to be there. But Dixon was most certainly his apprentice. Dixon became famous in Scotland, and they actually started to call this mystical memory art Dixon's art. But we see Dixon appear in this strange poem. This muses Thenodie. Thenodie is musing on death, contemplation of death. In this, we see one of the first mentions of the Mason's word. And this mention is counterposed, you can see it here, with the term rosy cross. So this little poem here is saying that those who know the Mason's word are Rosicrucians and that they can predict the future. And it's just after a bit when they're talking about Alexander Dixon. So there's kind of an implication that the memory arts of Freemasons allow them to do what people believe this memory art could do. They could see into the future. The idea was your memory was so good, you could see beyond your life, you could see in front of your life. So here's a connection between the mystical Hermetic art of memory and Freemasonry, albeit in this very strange poem. The Hermetic art of memory let go of the Christian symbolism and started to use the symbolism of the classical world and of the planets. Gone was King Solomon's temple and the coat of many colours, and in were memory theatres. Now, the memory theatre is very interesting. This is one of the earliest memory palaces you'll ever hear about. And Giulio Camino, who designed this, he was known to be able to use these different sections of his memory palace to bring forth certain influences. So there's a famous scene that was reported at the time where he was in Paris, and there was a display of rare animals, and a lion had got free, and it was mauling people, and it came towards him, and he transported himself into his memory theatre, and he went to the point of the sun and became at one with the force of the sun. And this gave him the power to control the lion, so he could stroke it and it was subservient to him. This was a big story at the time. And it may actually be true, because they've actually found a private diary of someone who's a friend of Giulio Camillo, and he says that he was there. But the diary entry is quite fun. It actually says, yes, he worked this miracle that everyone's reporting about. Yes, he did this. But what no one knows is he only did it because he was too fat to run. So there you go, brethren. You can work miracles, but your friends are still going to find fault with it somewhere. So the idea was that you would be able to gain some kind of influence of the planets by putting them within a memory palace inside you. The art was divided into two steps. The first one, which corresponded to the stage of the theatre, was the square art. This square art you can see pictured here. This is a wonderful picture from Robert Flood. This is the temple or the fortress of health. So to begin with, you are going to balance your personality. This is very much like the Christian art. You're going to use contemplation on images to bring around a balance in earth, air, fire, and water within yourself. Then, when you are as fiery and ambitious as you are watery, flexible, and intuitive. When you are as solid and stable as earth, but also as intellectual and calculating as air. When you have all four of these, you'll be healthy, you'll be balanced, you're ready for higher things. You're ready for the curved or spherical art. You can see this is normally to do with the signs of the zodiac or to do with the planets. And this involves bringing talents into yourself, great blessings into yourself. Some people have thought this is interesting because it can be seen that Freemasonry is divided into these two as well. Craft Freemasonry is the square art, Royal Arch is the curved. Certainly, a lot of the symbolism that was being used in the Hermetic and alchemical traditions at the time has come into Freemasonry. You can see them, they have beautiful woodcuts with the two pillars of King Solomon's temple with the letters representing their qualities with the sun and the moon there. It was seen that if you practice this whole path, you would combine the sun and the moon. And this was true alchemy. You'd go beyond the opposites. And this symbolism certainly became part of Masonic tradition, though we've got to be clear that at that time it was used in many aspects. The idea of being balanced was most certainly likened to this kind of eclipse style combination. But how did it work? There were different theories put forth at the time, some that we could see being very simple and easy to understand, and that many people would find believable, and some are more outlandish and more ambitious. Some believe that the Hermetic art was just about memorizing in the right order. So let's imagine this. Up until this point in your life, most people listening to this have heard about logic. They may have even learned about some of the syllogisms of logic. The Hermetic art says that your mind can't access them very well because you've never memorized them in the right way. If they were in a memory palace, it allows your memory to access them more instantly, and it makes it part of your consciousness. So if you were to memorize, we spent a whole week memorizing a palace that had all the principles of logic, all the syllogisms, all the arguments that are true, and then we memorized another palace, a palace of deception and confusion that had all the mistakes that people tend to make, the appeal to nature fallacy, the appeal to futility fallacy, all the common errors in reasoning. Something would happen. For the first time ever, your mind knows instantly. It can just get it from the memory palace. It's been laid out in your consciousness clearly. It knows truth. If you read the descriptions written in the day of doing this kind of thing, they're expecting you to become like Sherlock Holmes. Suddenly now you know truth in the right way, your observation improves, your calculation improves, your consciousness is raised in an almost supernatural way. What if you did it for other things? What if you had a memory palace which had all the arts of rhetoric in there, all the methods of persuasion? Would you be like Darren Brown? What would the effect be if your mind knew subconsciously all the ways to convince someone? What if you did them all? What if you did one for creativity, one for logic, one for persuasion, one for perception, or the methods of perceiving? Now you're getting the drift at how, if this principle is correct, the right form of memory leads to better access by the consciousness, you could upgrade yourself and achieve a kind of enlightenment. Others believe that this wasn't the real explanation. It was all about resonance. Just as certain things are in tune, the stars shine down their rays that goes into certain plants, people get on in certain ways, some things mix chemically, some things don't. Robert Flood used to say that it was about your heart. If you were to open your heart to something, to fully open your heart to something, it would transform you. This is like a form of meditation. So you see the angels here, you see the man, the Latin there is saying that he's a healthy man. He's healthy because he's at one with the four elements. He's got a balanced personality. So we've got the four archangels, Uriel, Raphael, Gabriel, Michael there. He has meditated on them as a form of his health, and he's become at one with them. His resonance is with goodness. And you can use this, you can become at one with any concept. So if you're lacking in love, you can meditate on love. And you use memory to do this. You memorize everything about it. You really contemplate it. One way to do this is to use a memory wheel. These wheels had been adapted by Giordano Bruno, who had learned them from the art of Raymond Lull. Lull put them together as a kind of reasoning, contemplation method. If logic is arithmetic, this is the algebra of thinking. It's really quite complicated to explain. My poor fiancée, she had 4 months of me doing this to try to break this sort of code and memorizing all the different associations. But one more simple way you can use it is to really contemplate one subject. If you want to bring forgiveness into your life, A, in the middle of that circle is forgiveness, and then you go through all the things you need to forgive. Forgive myself, forgive all the accidents that have happened when people have done things unwillingly. Turn the wheel, the next quality, the next letter. Forgive my family if they've done something wrong. Turn the wheel, the next quality. Forgive strangers. Turn the wheel. Forgive. This is a way of having a very deep meditation, and your memory is employed because you've got to remember what each of the letters represent. This is a way of being very involved in your practice. Here's the memory palace of John Dee, Queen Elizabeth I's personal royal court astrologer and magician. This is called the hieroglyphic monad. John Dee states clearly that you need to put this in your active creative imagination and memory. So what you do here is you meditate on each one of the planetary symbols, becoming at one with the qualities they represent. Maybe we could see the sun as being creative and brave and light. We could see Mercury as being full of learning and of good eloquence. We can see Venus as being loving and connecting. We could go on. But once you've meditated on each one and achieved this oneness with them, this oneness is something that you would call samadhi if you were practicing yoga or studying Buddhism. The samyama or samadhi, they called it extatio, or to Bruno, this was a contraction. You become at one with something, it makes you gain its qualities. And then you put them all together into one symbol. Imagine being at one of all these qualities at the same time. That's what this practice was about. So this Hermetic art of memory was really important at the time. And it was a practice that was taking place. It was something that people were very involved in. We know of demonstrations of excellence through this. Alexander Dixon himself, he'd actually been banned from going to the gambling houses in London. Him and his students would come down from Scotland, go gambling, and they could memorize a deck of cards in just one site. So they just leave all the English money and go back to Scotland. We know that Dixon showed great memory, and there's even hints of ability to sense things. He was said to have found William Wallace's boat. It was in the Perth, and he could remember where it was. So this memory art was being used in many different ways, in creative ways. You want to invent something, you create an inventory. An inventory would be a list of everything that had been created before, and it would be a mixing pot in the mind. So, is this part of Masonic tradition? Is there an element within our practices which leads to a oneness with a symbol that should bring a change? And I'm talking beyond the Christian art, where it's a sense of big experience of learning a lesson through contemplation, but rather a direct union, an experience so strong that you and that virtue are one. So there we have it, brethren. We have the classical art for speech making, the Christian art for cultivating virtue, and the Hermetic art which leads to a direct oneness. Which do you think had the most influence on the creation of Masonic ritual? This is your chance to tell me.
Martin, thank you ever so much. Absolutely wonderful once again. I'm just waiting for questions to come in. Brethren, if you do have questions, please do use the hand up icon on the participant section. Martin, could I ask you just to, unless you need to keep it up.
Certainly, there is some reason, if there are certain questions that I've got slides to answer if someone's interested, so we could go back if we need to.
Okay, perfect. Everybody's gone quiet. Oh, there we go. Could we first go to Simon Reader? Hi, Simon.
Hello. Am I off mute?
You off mute, yeah.
Excellent. So the button didn't work when I tried it before on a question, so it did this time. Thank you very much. I was looking forward to this one, actually, following from your previous memory one. I do have massive memory issues for health reasons. So a lot of these tricks are stuff that I've been using anyway. I thoroughly enjoyed that, but time pressing, obviously, I want to move on to my question. I remember it was many years ago. I've been a Mason for over 21 years now. I remember back at my Mother Lodge, there was a lodge there called Hermes Trismegistus. And at the time, I found it very strange that that was Masonic. When I mentioned it to someone, they went, well, yeah, of course, why? And then I've never heard anything again about the connections between Hermes and until now, until you've been mentioning it here. Is there more connections between Hermes and Freemasonry that it's just because I'm not in the right things that I don't know about, or is there a direction that I can take to look into that further?
Thank you, Simon. This is a wonderful question. So let me be absolutely clear. Freemasonry itself is most influenced by that Christian art of memory. If we look at it in its structure, we are practicing a memory palace which is based on a King Solomon's temple and biblical temple. It's probable, in my opinion, that the stonemasons in Scotland, they learnt this as an art. They learnt the art of memory as a form of self-improvement, and they started putting this into their organisation as a means to help illiterate builders be good builders. We answer questions in the same way as you see in other Christian memory arts. You know, there's catechisms. This is very much part of this Christian learning, and our symbols are very much from Christianity. We do, however, see that some of the Renaissance thought has had a gentle influence on Freemasonry. But our ambitions are not as high as the Hermetic art, are they? We want to be good and virtuous people, and Freemasonry is de-Christianized in order to allow people of all faiths to join. There have always been people who see more in Freemasonry than what I've just summarized. And there's actually some interesting early records. The first mention we see is in an old charge called the Clause Manuscript. And I'm suspicious of it. It's a German text that says that it's a translation of text from York. And Hermes Trismegistus is there. And it's just too suspicious. It says it's a lot older than the copy and the publisher's not real. I think that Freemasons who are interested in Hermetic things have very much wanted to bring Hermeticism closer to Freemasonry. And I think that Freemasonry is more gentle and universal than that practice. So, in my opinion, if you wish to study philosophical things from this tradition, Freemasonry is a lovely foundation. But Freemasonry, its goals are more gentle and more moral based than they are about this higher state of illumination that the Hermeticists are seeking.
Great answer, thank you.
Thanks, Simon. Martin, if I could ask the next one, it's come through on the chat group. How can we learn more, or how can you learn these methods, or where can you learn these methods?
Well, I predicted that this might be a question. May I please talk about some books?
Of course.
Would that be?
Absolutely.
Okay, so first and foremost, many of the brethren here will be aware I wrote a book on Freemasonry and the art of memory. This is all three forms of memory, and it's got the references. If you want to know which Scottish lodges have got the Shaw statutes or who the students in that court were, this is it. But if you're really interested in the Hermetic art of memory, for the first time in history, we actually have a memory manual written by Alexander Dixon, the student of Giordano Bruno. So this has been recently published. It's called the Hermetic Art of Memory. It's a really in-depth guide. We also have a text which is being released next week. It's available on pre-order. You saw that lovely memory palace of Robert Flood. Mnemonic Methods by Robert Flood. This is the first time we've ever seen this. This is more of a practical guide. It's got all memory techniques for even remembering things like numbers and names and everything, but it has his hints and a commentary that teaches you these. In addition to these works, of course, you can get the works of Giordano Bruno. But be warned, nothing is just given away. So Bruno himself was trying to make sure that he gave enough in his works that interested people, but not so much that he would get into trouble. He also wanted people to come and pay him to learn. And of course, if anyone knows about the story of Bruno, he didn't succeed in that, not getting in trouble. He was actually burnt at the stake as a heretic in the end. But these works are also available and are wonderfully beautiful to read. So these are my recommendations for those who wish to learn, who don't have a teacher. There are also some people who still teach this if you're willing to understudy with them.
Brilliant, thanks, Martin. I can see many trying to jot maybe all those names down. Brethren, if you haven't had a chance to, what I will do is when I put my next post up on our page, I will make reference to those books for you.
Oh yes, Radu has said something. So Dame Frances Yates wrote a wonderful book on the art of memory. And what's interesting from that point of view is you will see an excellent, thrilling academic writing about this art and what she believes the connections are. Now, she was convinced, and I've become so, that the real link between the Hermetic art is more in the Royal Arch. And that's something we can't talk about in any forum that would be public. That's a separate talk I do. And I found some wonderful evidence where the words that are very important in Royal Arch came from and how they're connected with some very early alchemical manuscripts and what they really mean, what were they used for. So Frances Yates, she believed there was a definite connection there. So that book's really worth having. Someone could share the link in the chat and indeed send it to Amit. That'd be wonderful.
Excellent, thank you, Martin. One that's come through to me here is when you talk about memory places, can one, I was trying to decipher the question, can one use anything or any visual as a memory place or palace?
So the exact instructions for a good memory palace, the first complete one we get is from a lovely text from the Roman times called Ad Herennium. Ad Herennium means for Henry. Ironically, we don't know who Henry was, but Rhetorica Ad Herennium, speech making for Henry. And it says as follows: choose a building that you can visit often. Make sure that it's quiet and that you are able to walk around it. It's far better to have a real building in mind than an imaginary one. It's far more firm in your memory to begin with. Walk around this building, stopping at regular points, making sure they're not too far apart, but not too close together. Make sure the different stations that you stop at, these locations, are different and don't repeat. Make sure the lighting isn't too bright or isn't too dark. So, yes, you could use any building you get access to again and again. Everyone here already has a memory palace, the Masonic Lodge. We walk around it. We stop at specific points again and again. There are symbols there. You have got one memory palace. Your house is probably another one. So if you have a quick look on YouTube afterwards, or maybe we could share the link, you'll see me do some memory feats, memorize a whole pack of cards in order. You'll memorize a whole magazine. I use my house for mundane things, for philosophical important things, or when really challenged, I use a Masonic temple, and I use set places for other things. But yes, any building can be that. Some people have also used pictures. If you have a look at these emblem books, you really must check them out. They're fabulous. So during the late medieval period and during the Renaissance and Enlightenment, they had these books you could buy, and they're basically, every page is a tracing board. So just as tracing boards have these pictures to help us remember the text, they would memorize things like that. There's one that allows you to memorize each one of the Gospels, or there's one that allows you to memorize certain things. Some are to lead to a sort of sense of understanding of something, help you deal with a certain thing, to bring inner calmness. Yes, so pictures, stained glass windows. Have a look. Your church is a memory palace. If you've got an old church near you, they've got statues which are biographies of the person. In one hand, they've got the book they wrote, and the other hand, they've got the way they died, and they're standing on the place where they were born. They've got symbols telling you everything about them. It was made to be memorized.
Brilliant. Thanks, Martin. We've got one final question. Before I go to that, to Brother Philippe, on the chat group, a lot of them have noticed that we didn't ask a question to give away our mugs today. And there was a reason for that, brethren. Because if I asked this at the start, I know all of you would be getting on Google or Facebook and trying to find the answer. So you've got from now up until the end of the talk, which is probably going to be another 5 or 6 minutes, to tell me what the date of Martin's talk was on our Freemasons Without Borders platform and the title of the talk. Brother Philippe, we'll come to you next if you don't mind.
Okay, thank you. Nice question there as well. So one question to Martin, and thank you for the lecture, is could you share maybe some insights on how to use these techniques when applying that to the memorization of the ritual? Because when I saw some of your talks, I was more like, okay, I can use these to construct a shopping list, a single item, put, I don't know, one over the sofa, and maybe to buy some eggs in the bed or whatever. But when applying that to the ritual where you have longer phrases and maybe also some interactions with other, let's say, roles, how would one apply this? Thank you.
Certainly. So let's be clear. The protocol I'm going to give you now is the Christian art of memory, because this is more in tune with the goals of Freemasonry, to a peculiar system of morality. This is what the stonemasons probably would have been in contact with. So if I had to sort of bet how they were learning originally, using the lodge as a memory palace, it would be as follows, because this is what the manuals, the actual memory manuals being produced in Scotland at the time, would tell you to do. Your first practice would be to familiarize yourself with the lodge room, so much so that you can walk around it in your imagination. That's your first thing. And you would sit every day and close your eyes. For the medieval stonemason, they probably would have symbols drawn in chalk or something like that to help them imagine they were in King Solomon's temple. We don't need to now. We've actually got lovely different lodges, buildings. Once you've done that, then you're going to start from the beginning, and you're going to imagine everything. You're going to imagine you walk into the place of your role, and you're going to sit in that position or stand in that position. You are going to visualize all the people who are there. This painting with the mind was seen as a great virtue that a stonemason needed. So this would be really good for you, your imagination. You would then start to add in the words, and you connect them with the symbols. There should be some event or symbol that connects it with the words. Now, memory, add the verbatim, which is memory for exact wording, tended not to use memory palaces quite in the same way, but that often. So probably what you would do is you'd start saying the words, and every time one got a bit sticky, you'd add in a memory image so that it wouldn't disappear again. So if you were saying the chisel pointed out the value of education, you'd imagine the point there. But you'd use jokes, you'd use images, you'd use play on words, you'd use the initials. You could even connect them with objects that were around the place. These invisible pins in your speech, you use them to begin with, again and again and again. After a while, they become invisible, but it helps them stick. There's a wonderful book which takes this a stage further, more than I think was originally done, called King Solomon's Memory Palace. It's not by Lewis Masonic. It's a wonderful author, though. I think it's a great book. And this does every single word into an image in front of you, in your imagination. I think that technique is brilliant. It's a bit cumbersome, in my opinion. I think you should only put a memory image in when you've got stuck. Use those triggers from the other people as your prompts. Remember that from a memory point of view, awareness training is part of it. So the truth is, Masonic Ritual is very awareness-based. If you drift off, that's when your prompt comes, isn't it? It's very strange. You've been waiting for your bit in the ritual for the last 3/4 of an hour. And the moment you think, oh, I wonder what I'm going to do tomorrow morning, that's when the prompt comes and you're caught out. So awareness is the key. Develop that awareness by sitting and imagining and build it up, build it up. Really connect with those symbols. Remember that they believed that if you put a symbol in here, it would transform you. So when someone gives you a level, it would make you more balanced, it would make you more equal, it would work. Keep that belief now, and that adds a lot to it. Let's go back to that. Sorry, that was as much I could summarize at speed here of the original memorization method. I hope that is of use.
Wonderful. Thanks, Brother Philippe. Martin, we have got one more that's come through. I've seen it on the chat group. Brother Ardesh Shah, would you like to ask your question? Perhaps not.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Yes. A great talk. Thank you so much. I think you sort of answered half my question there, Martin. But the question was, what can I practically do now to try and improve my memory in the short term before I start reading all these books, etc.? Certainly.
So first and foremost, and this is the beginning of your memory practice. This is your initiation into memory. From this moment on, you must start using your memory and indeed your cognitive abilities at every opportunity. If you drive somewhere twice with the sat nav, you don't use it for the third time. You're going to start using it. When you meet someone and they introduce themselves to you, use their name back to them 3 or 4 times. Lock that in. Make a memory image. If the woman's called Michelle, think of her nose being shaped as a shell, or if the man's Mr. Cooper, imagine he's in a barrel. Use something exciting. Use something silly. Use something shocking to connect that in there, but make the effort. Don't use a calculator if you can do the arithmetic. Make every moment a chance for you to improve your cognitive abilities. Embrace an opportunity to remember. If someone gives you a list of things to buy, put them into the mind, repeat them, make an image, use a memory palace, start to use that mind, and you'll see that it will start to gain fitness. We're walking with crutches with our memory when they're not injured. We've got to start exercising it. So that's the first thing. The second thing you need to move on from, once you kind of got this habit, you're going to embrace memory at every opportunity. You're going to remember things, not write them down anymore. Then you can start to study some memory techniques. You could go to my YouTube channel. There's talks like this, but there's also practical ideas about using memory. There's hundreds and hundreds of videos on them. And then maybe start with the Mosaic Palace book. That teaches you how to make a memory palace and the basics. This is the path forwards. And it's a great and beneficial path, which to me is part of the Masonic path.
Thank you so much. Brilliant.
Thank you, Ardash. We've only got a couple of minutes left, brother, but I can see Derek Burt has put his hand up. So if we could quickly go to Derek. Like I said, we've got a couple of minutes left. Hi, Derek.
Hi, thanks. All I was going to say was, does the memory ability deteriorate with age?
Yes, it does, Derek, if it's not used. So here is something I'm really passionate about and we need to get out there. This locational based memory, when you remember something in a place with an image and some words, is what memory champions use. It's also what we use in Masonic Ritual. It's the same art. Studies have shown that just 6 weeks of training with this form of memory leads to a rewiring of the functioning of the brain. It leads to people's minds working like memory athletes. Have a look on, again, Lewis Masonic website. I wrote an article called The Health Benefits of Masonic Ritual, because this is a very good study with a lot of people and great protocol. And it shows that up to 10 years later, people who have studied these memory arts have superior functioning memory. Not only are they good at remembering day-to-day things, but they can memorize things they choose to in a superior way as well. And there's some strange side effects. We don't really know why, but we found that not only did this protect people against age-related memory loss in a significant way, same kind of level that learning a foreign language does, because I don't know if you're aware, learning a foreign language also helps improve your memory and protect you against any memory loss as you get older. But this also showed that those people who'd learnt memory arts had greater perception and fell over less often as they got older. It's something good about the body and about the awareness. So when that old past master told us Masonic Ritual kept him young and was good for his mind, he was right. So next time someone asks you, Derek, that to do the charged initiate without any warning, and you have to suddenly go, and start studying it, remember this is really good for your mind, really good for you. Masonic Ritual gives you superior memory and prevents age-related memory loss. This is a health benefit we should be telling people about.
Oh, thank you for that.
Thank you, Derek. Martin, once again, from everybody on here today, thank you ever so much. I feel there's a part 3, which you and I will probably need to...
Certainly, we will discuss part 3. Maybe this is how. We've done the historical, maybe the how.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Thank you ever so much.
For having me.
Brethren, once again, thank you all for taking your time out and joining us today on this call. As I said at the start, we have got some great speakers lined up through November and December, and we will be continuing the weekly Tuesday Zoom talks. I think we're on week 31 now. Which is fantastic. So look, we've got some wonderful speakers. Next week, we're going to be welcoming back Worshipful Brother Tony Harvey, whose talk will be entitled The Future of Freemasonry, Evolution and Change. Stay safe, brethren. Keep smiling. And I look forward to seeing you all next week. God bless.
Good night.